I'm going to tell you something you won't like hearing. If you're waiting to feel motivated before you take action, you're already losing. That's the trap most people fall into. They wait for the perfect morning, the perfect headspace, the perfect rush of inspiration, and every day they wait, the distance between who they are and who they want to become gets wider. I've seen what happens when men rely on motivation in situations where hesitation gets you killed. Out in the teams, we had a saying, comfort is a liar. And if you stay here with me right now, I'm going to give you a solution that almost nobody outside the special operations community has ever been taught. A solution that flips motivation on its head and forces your brain to obey, even when every cell in your body wants to quit. But before I give you that, I need you to do something. Right now, turn your phone on silent, flip it face down, and kill every notification you have. If you can't do that, if your attention is that fragile, then click off this video. I'm serious. This is the first test. Because if you can't follow a simple order in a quiet room, there's no chance you'll follow through on the harder orders you need to fix your life. Discipline starts here with a decision that takes less than 2 seconds. Phone down, eyes up, stay with me. Good. Now, let me tell you why I get to be this direct with you. My name is John. I'm an ex-Navy SEAL. I spent over a decade in the world's most elite special operations force, operating in places where hesitation meant mission failure, and mission failure meant someone didn't go home. I didn't learn this stuff from a podcast or a self-help seminar. I learned it in freezing water at 4 in the morning after 48 hours of no sleep, when motivation wasn't even a memory anymore. I learned it on nights where the ocean tried to swallow us whole, and the only thing that kept me moving was the one principle I'm about to teach you. If you apply this for 7 days, just 7, you'll stop waiting for motivation for the rest of your life. You'll build the kind of discipline most people only pretend to have. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to give you the strategy step by step, the same way we planned missions, clear, simple, and impossible to misunderstand. First, I'll show you the exact moment motivation failed me and why that moment changed my entire philosophy on action. Then I'll break down the mechanism your brain uses to sabotage your consistency and how to override it like we did in training. And finally, I'll give you the discipline hack itself, something we used in the teams to activate movement instantly, no matter how cold, exhausted, or mentally wiped we were. By the time we're done, you'll have a tactic you can use today before the sun goes down. Now I want you to prove you're listening. Drop the word locked in the comments so I know you passed the first test and you're ready for the real work. Now take a breath, lock in your focus, and step with me into the moment that taught me what discipline really is. Most people don't realize this, but your brain is designed to lie to you. Not maliciously, not because you're weak, but because your mind is wired for survival, not progress. And survival is the enemy of growth. When you wake up in the morning and you feel that pull to stay in bed, that's not laziness. That's biology trying to keep you inside a predictable, low-risk environment. When you tell yourself you'll start the workout later, that's not logic, that's dopamine negotiation. Your brain is always trying to make you choose the option that burns the least energy. That's comfort bias. It's ancient, primal, and it has nothing to do with the life you say you want. The problem is simple. The modern world requires consistency, but your brain rewards comfort. And that is why waiting for motivation destroys people. I watched this pattern break men in Bud S long before the ocean or the instructors did. Every class had a few guys who looked unstoppable. The moment they woke up in a bad mood or the cold punched them a little harder that day, they were done. Not because they were underprepared physically, but because their operating system depended on the presence of a feeling. If the feeling wasn't there, their action collapsed. They were running a civilian mindset in an environment that demanded an operator's mindset. Civilians wait for the right emotional weather to act. Operators wait for orders, even when those orders demand suffering, especially when they demand suffering. That's why SEALs don't rely on motivation. We rely on protocol, repetition, and identity. The mission doesn't care how we feel. The mission only cares what we do. Your brain releases dopamine when you anticipate something pleasurable. That's why scrolling your phone feels easier than starting the workout, opening the book, writing the business plan, or walking into the cold morning air. Your brain is hunting the quickest hit of reward, not the longest arc of transformation. That pattern keeps you alive in the wild, but it keeps you stagnant in real life. The people who say, I'm just not motivated today, are accidentally telling the truth. They're not motivated because dopamine isn't firing the way they want it to. But that's like waiting for the weather to change before you go to work. You don't need motivation. You need command. In the teams, we rewire this entire system through something brutally simple. Remove emotional permission from the decision-making process. If I needed to feel ready before stepping into the water at 3 a.m., I'd still be standing on the beach. Instead, we create what I call automatic obedience. You give yourself the order and you execute before the brain can negotiate. The longer you let the brain debate, the more time comfort bias has to build its case. And comfort arguments are always seductive. Just 5 more minutes. Start tomorrow. You've earned a break. If you've ever wondered why you can feel motivated at night but fail the next morning, that's why. At night, your dopamine is forecasting future improvement. In the morning, your survival instincts try to protect you from discomfort. Two different brains living in the same skull. Our training destroys that debate. When an instructor says go, your body moves. Your feelings don't enter the room. And eventually, the brain learns something powerful. Discomfort won't kill you. Hesitation will. That's when discipline becomes automatic. You stop asking, do I feel like it? And you start asking, what is the order? That shift is the line between people who change their lives and people who replay the same year forever. If you can learn to operate without emotional permission, even for 2 minutes, you're already operating like an operator instead of a civilian. And once you get a taste of that level of control, motivation becomes irrelevant. You don't wait for it, you override it, you overwrite it, and eventually you outgrow it completely. People think discipline is some heroic burst of willpower, but that's not how it works in the real world. The truth is far less glamorous and far more reliable. Discipline is engineering. It's a system, and every system needs a trigger, a sequence, and a shutdown. What I'm about to give you is the exact method I used in the teams and later passed down to new guys, especially the ones who thought motivation would carry them across the finish line. It's what I call the 4-minute activation rule, and it's the closest thing to a cheat code I've ever found for consistent action. If motivation is a spark, this rule is the engine that actually gets you moving. The rule is simple. Whatever task you're avoiding, give it 4 minutes. Not the whole workout, not the whole project, not the whole morning routine, just 4 minutes. I learned the power of this during a night evolution when I was training a group of incoming EOD candidates. The water was freezing, the wind was cutting through us like blades, and morale was dropping. One of the guys, big, strong, looked like he could deadlift a truck, was staring at the surf like it was his execution. I knew exactly what was happening in his head. He wasn't afraid of the whole evolution, he was afraid of starting. So I told him, you don't need to make it through the next hour. You need to make it through the next 4 minutes. And the second he stepped into that water, everything in his brain shifted. The dread disappeared, the activation kicked in, and he completed the whole evolution without hesitation. That's the psychology behind the rule. Your brain can't process the full scale of a challenge without triggering resistance, but it can handle 4 minutes. 4 minutes bypasses the survival alarms. It slides under the radar, and once you start, momentum takes over. 90% of the battle is getting into motion. After that, discipline carries the rest. But the rule alone isn't enough. You also need micro objectives. Operators never look at the mission as one giant chunk. That's how people freeze. When we were clearing a building or prepping charges, we broke everything down into micro actions: step, scan, breathe, move, cover. Each action was small enough to execute instantly. That's why we could perform under chaos. You need the same thing in your daily life. If the objective is to work out, the micro objective is to put the shoes on. If the objective is to write, the micro objective is to open the document. If the objective is to clean the house, the micro objective is to pick up the first item. Micro objectives create instant wins, and instant wins reset your brain chemistry. Then come your environmental triggers. In the teams, your environment controls the tempo. Boots lined up a certain way, gear staged in the same place every time, weapons checked with the same rhythm. It wasn't about neatness, it was about priming the brain. When your environment signals action, your body follows. If you want discipline, you can't live inside a chaos zone. You need visual cues that tell your brain it's time. Set your clothes out the night before, put your running shoes by the door, place your notebook on the desk before you go to bed. Make your environment issue the order before your feelings have a chance to interfere. And now we get to the heart of this entire chapter, the zero negotiation protocol. This is pure SEAL philosophy. When the order comes in, you don't debate it, you don't think about it, you don't check in with your emotions, you execute. Every second you spend negotiating with yourself is a second you're letting weakness pitch you a sales presentation. That big, strong EOD candidate who froze in front of the surf, he failed the moment he started negotiating with himself, and he succeeded the moment he stopped. When I told him 4 minutes, I wasn't giving him an option. I was giving him a command he could obey without thinking, and once he obeyed, the negotiation died and the action lived. If you combine the 4-minute activation rule with micro objectives, environmental triggers, and zero negotiation, you become dangerous. Not because you're motivated, but because you're activated. You're not waiting for a feeling. You're flipping a switch. And once you master that switch, discipline stops being something you admire in other people and becomes something you expect from yourself every single day. Most people think consistency is something you earn after months or years of grinding, but that's not how we built it in the teams. We built consistency fast, under pressure, and with no room for second guessing. What I'm about to give you is a 7-day transformation blueprint that mirrors the same structure we used to break old habits out of new candidates and rebuild them as operators. It's simple, it's ruthless, and if you follow it without skipping days, you'll feel the shift before the week is even over. This isn't about motivation. This is about conditioning your nervous system to obey your mission instead of your mood. Day one is the day you break the motivation myth once and for all. You wake up and you do something uncomfortable immediately. Cold water on your face, a 2-minute plank, a brisk walk outside before checking your phone, anything that sends a signal to your brain that feelings do not dictate action. In Buds, we use discomfort as a reset button. You're doing the same thing here. It's not punishment, it's reprogramming. Day one is the day you prove to yourself that action comes first, emotion comes second, and that flips a switch most people never touch. Day two is about creating your first discipline anchor. In the teams, we built anchors into everything. A certain sound, a certain movement, a certain placement of gear. It all triggered the same response. Get ready. For you, this anchor might be as simple as a specific song, a specific phrase, or a specific physical action like tying your shoes or opening your notebook. Every time you hit that anchor, your body moves. You're building a ritual that bypasses hesitation. The anchor becomes the order becomes movement. That's how operators get into the zone without warming up. Day three is where you fight and win your first 4-minute war. Pick a task you've been avoiding and attack it with the 4-minute activation rule. No distractions, no strategy, no overthinking. 4 minutes of pure execution. If you do this right, you'll feel resistance in your chest. That's normal. That's the part of your brain that's terrified you're about to break its comfort routines. Good. Break them. The goal is not to finish the whole task. The goal is to experience what it feels like to win the start. If you win the start of your day, you win the day. Day four is environmental dominance. This is where most civilians fall apart. Their environments are hostile to discipline. Their desks look like chaos. Their mornings start with noise. Their nights end with clutter. Operators can't work like that, and neither can you. On day four, you clear your space. You stage your tools. You design your environment to make action the easy option and avoidance the hard one. Put your clothes out, preload the workstation, remove the junk food, set the morning water on the counter. When your environment issues the order, you stop relying on willpower. Day five is identity reinforcement. In the teams, identity was everything. You performed the way you saw yourself. If you saw yourself as a victim, you broke. If you saw yourself as a warrior, you adapted. On day five, you start speaking to yourself like someone who executes, not someone who wishes. Every time you complete a small mission, you say it out loud or write it down. I am someone who follows through. The brain will resist this at first. It's supposed to. Identity upgrades always meet friction. That friction is proof you're doing it right. Day six is friction removal. You look at everything that slows you down. Messy routines, scattered tools, unnecessary decisions, digital distractions, the stuff you keep meaning to fix later. In the teams, we had a saying, smooth is fast, fast is lethal. You're making your life smooth. You eliminate the frictions that drain your energy before the real mission even starts. Lay out your plan. Simplify your meals. Automate anything you can. Every point of friction you remove frees up bandwidth for discipline. Day seven is the internal after-action report. Every mission ends with one. We break down what worked, what failed, where you hesitated, and how you're going to improve. You're doing the same thing. Sit down with a notebook and assess the week with ruthless honesty. Where did you win? Where did you negotiate with yourself? Where did momentum pick up? What needs to tighten? This is where consistency becomes permanent. You're not shaming yourself. You're strategizing like an operator. By the time you finish these 7 days, something shifts. You stop waiting. You stop debating. You stop hoping for motivation to show up like a blessing. You become someone who moves because movement is the mission, and missions are non-negotiable. That's SEAL level consistency, and it starts the moment you decide to follow these 7 days without flinching. When I look back at everything we've talked about so far, it brings me right back to that moment from chapter 1, the freezing water, the darkness before dawn, the exhaustion crawling up my spine like a living thing. I didn't know it then, but that moment wasn't about surviving cold water or proving toughness. It was a test of something much deeper. It was the moment I realized that motivation had absolutely nothing to do with who I would become. And now, after walking you through the psychology, the tactics, the blueprint, this is where you face your own version of that moment. This is your final test, not a test of strength or talent or confidence, a test of whether you finally understand that your life is the mission, and missions don't wait for feelings. You might not see it yet, but you're already stronger than you think. Most people click off videos like this long before they reach the end. Most people bail the moment discomfort shows its face, but you're still here. That alone says more about you than you realize. In the teams, we used to say that the guy who's still standing after everyone else is done talking. That's the guy you can trust on a long night. And right now, you're still here, still listening, still absorbing, still leaning forward. That means you're not the civilian your mind has been trying to convince you that you are. You're someone who has the potential to operate at a higher level than you've been living at. You just needed someone to show you the switch. And here it is, the truth I learned the hard way. Motivation is a luxury. Discipline is freedom. Motivation is like the weather. It changes without warning. It abandons you right when you need it. It shows up late and leaves early. But discipline is the one force in your life that cannot be taken from you unless you hand it over. Discipline is the structure that builds you into someone you can respect. It's the weapon you carry into the days when everything feels heavy. It's the armor you wear against weakness, fear, and the lies your brain tells you to keep you safe but small. When motivation left me standing on that shoreline, discipline was the only reason I stepped forward. And it's the only reason you'll step into the life you keep imagining but haven't claimed yet. If you've gone through the 7-day blueprint, or even if you've only absorbed the principles so far, you need to understand something. You have already begun your mission, and missions don't end with a single evolution. They expand, they demand more. They reveal layers you didn't know were there. That's why this moment right here matters. This is your debrief. You're looking back at what you've learned, feeling the shift, and preparing for what comes next. This isn't the finish line, this is the doorway. And every operator knows the doorway is the most dangerous place to hesitate. So here's the truth you need to carry out of this chapter. Your life will not change because you feel ready. It will change because you act when you don't. Every time you override your excuses, every time you give yourself the order, every time you execute before hesitation can speak, you carve a new identity. Not the old version of you who waited for inspiration, but the emerging version of you who operates with clarity, drive, and a sense of mission. And now, just like during a real debrief, I'm going to leave you with one final instruction, because your transformation doesn't end here. If you think this was powerful, wait until you see what happens when you take this discipline and apply it to the part of your life you've been avoiding the most. The next phase separates the people who understand the theory from the ones who become unstoppable. When you're ready, when you've caught your breath, when you feel that fire in your chest that tells you you're done with your old operating system, move to the next lesson. That's where the real transformation begins.